is going on, RotoGrinders? Welcome back to the NFL Pick 6 show. I'm your host, Dean. That's Dean 78904 if you want to get all technical as far as the DFS streets. We have reached week 10. Yes, say it with me. Can you believe it? Double digits. Joining me, as always, usual suspects, two of the sharpest minds in all of the NFL DFS and fantasy football. Batting first, leading off. We already talked to pre-show, me and Daigle, so I'll ask you, Hribar. Do you feel it? Can you believe we're past the half poll here? We're at week 10, double digits. Are we getting excited or what?
Yeah, man, I'm excited. There's 7 weeks left, but it was nice. You know, for the past 5 days, it was 75 degrees here. We set a new record high each day, so it didn't even feel like mid-November. But it's gonna turn. It looks like we might have some more bad weather this weekend. You know, we don't have the Browns game on the docket here, but it looks like there might be some sketchy weather in that game. Come this weekend. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, I mean, mid-November, we're here, man. Holiday season is right around the corner. I don't know if any of you guys get out at all. I don't get out very much these days, but when last time I was out, all the Christmas stuff was already out already. So
I agree with Rich. Global warming is absolutely terrific. It's pretty great when you can walk outside in November and it's 75 degrees everywhere, even in Chicago.
I mean, the world's not going to end while we're alive, so
let's enjoy it. I agree.
Screw you, 2040. We don't care about you or whatever. Probably go a little higher. But and I'm in South Florida where there's all these. It won't stop raining because there's not tornadoes, fake hurricanes, tropical warnings, tropical storms. There you go.
Isn't areas of Florida getting snow this week as well?
Oh, I don't know about that. If it is, it's probably the Panhandle. I can't imagine. It's not where I'm at, but it historically has snowed before, and it once. And nobody cares about this, but it snowed in Miami in the 70s. There you go. Google it. It happened. But I can't imagine.
I hear it snows in Miami quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. A lot of snow.
That's a Scarface reference, I imagine.
that's a Benjamin Miami reference.
How this goes down in the Pick 6 show. Hey, YouTube, what's up? Apparently you guys are back up. So what's up, YouTube? Hopefully we're up and running. You guys are watching. If you guys are not watching us live, which is a good portion of people, because this show drops 9 o'clock. We record it live. We show it live. Well, how would you not record it live? That's just how it goes, I suppose. But yeah, 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night, we're going to talk about the slate, most specifically the main slate, break it down even more and talk about 3 featured games, and we'll branch out after that. And we'll talk about other players that we didn't get to talk about in our 3 featured games. Featured games are really, really strong this week. All right, sure. Let's dive right on in. Oh, like and subscribe. Hey, YouTube, like, subscribe. If you guys say anything interesting in the comments, go ahead. What do you have?
Hot week this week. 5 1 o'clock games. 6 4 o'clock games. Mm-hmm. It finally has happened. I don't know who got religion here and decided to do this, but more weeks like this, please.
Why can't we do this every week? I know it's a dumb question, but why can't we? Is it that hard to figure this out? Why can't we do this every single week instead of having to deal with 2 terrible games at 4 o'clock? Make this happen. Come on. Rob, does anybody have Goodell's cell phone number? But I don't know. But I'm looking forward to that very much. I think it's kind of backloaded too. I think that the best games are on in the 4 o'clock slate, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, 5 up front, 6 at the end. As far as teams that are on bye, Atlanta, the Jets, the Chiefs, the Cowboys, not talking about them. Thursday night game, thankfully we don't talk about the Colts or the Titans. I just find those teams so boring. Baltimore and New England. Hey, I'm going to save money. I'm not going to play Lamar Jackson this week in the main slate. They keep losing money in him. He's talking about how the defenses know exactly what they're doing every time. That's great. That seems suboptimal.
I got a lot of start-sit questions this week with Marquise Brown, and the good news is don't have to worry about it this week. He's not going to be on the DFS slate, so I don't have to chase that squeaky wheel again because that will stay squeaky.
I keep playing it. Who? Just out of curiosity, I know you guys do a lot of season-long stuff. Who are the guys that are being compared to Marquise Brown? Who's this guy or that guy? How bad are the receivers that they're considering instead of Brown?
It's not really. He hasn't really reached that point. A lot of people have reached the point with wanting to drop DJ Moore right now. He's the guy who's really frustrating everyone. And of course, finding someone to start over Zeke is also a weekly conundrum because no one wants to play Zeke. And who can blame them?
The chat is saying CBS says no 1 o'clock. Oh, is it because of the Masters? Is that why? That might have something to do with it. And maybe the Masters is at a different time of year. I don't follow golf really well. But
so it wasn't religion. It's actually golf that made football better for us.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening because CBS has the Masters rights, and I think the Masters was bumped because of COVID.
Makes sense. Listen, I don't watch golf and I don't play golf, but I got a bunch of golf lineups this week.
I am too.
I do too.
I have some tickets for the Money Maker on DK, and then I'm like, well, if I'm going to do some research, I might as well get my money's worth and max out the 20 here and max out the 20 there, and of course, on RG. This is a seamless segue. If you guys want to get yourself some golf content, you get your Core 4 for $5 off. The link will be dropped in chat for you guys. Core 4 Sports, basketball is right around the corner, which is just crazy, starting up next month. Of course, you get all our football content, baseball when it starts up. But there you go. Get $5 off your first month. Have at it. And what do you have for me?
I was going to say, the speaking of like golf being hot, like golf is going to be, if you're in the game this week, it's going to be hot because like that $4,500 millionaire on DK sold out by Tuesday. Like it just filled. Golf is hot this week. I'm excited about DFS golf, probably more than this slate, but I will talk about it nonetheless.
And I think there's a weather lurking potentially for golf too. So, and I know that matters. Kevin Roth hit him up on RotoGrinders. Obviously, I know he's been tweeting about it as well too. And I don't know, maybe it's going to be suspended. Don't follow me. Follow guys like, STL Cards and Noto and Roth tell you about weather and all that. Plenty of golf content here at RotoGrinders. I know they were recording a show earlier today. Not sure if that was premium or not. All right, let's talk about the main slate. The people want to talk about football. Oh, and here's a tease for you guys. It's a callback to a previous show. We have a certain grooming product we'll be talking about later on in the show. Get excited about that. As far as our 3 featured games.
It's the Flowbee.
It's not the Flowbee. It's a suck nut. There's a Wayne's World reference for the olds out there. This game is going to be phenomenal. It's Buffalo at Arizona. It's high. It's tight. 56 total. Arizona 2-point favorites here. We're in a dome. We got 2 teams that play super fast. I was looking at, I always like to run my optimals, and it's Wednesday night, so don't get too goofy, don't get too crazy as far as ownership. Don't want to, delve too many into those weeks too much, especially when, injuries yet to be decided. Who knows what's going on? Just Wednesday night, especially this year. Weird things are dropping Saturday, Sunday. But both these quarterbacks are 1-2 on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Allen and Kyler. Daigle, I imagine this is not a surprise for you. This is the most premium of games in the slate amongst the 11. Agreed?
Agreed. And also this game, I don't know if anyone got the line on Sunday night or Monday morning, opened at 49 and has since been bet up last time I checked to 56. So a touchdown increase for all the right reasons. That was a bad line to open with from the beginning. But yeah, it's again, like the Bills last week, 2 potent offenses yet again going at one another. I don't think we see a concerted game plan with Josh Allen, or as concerted, I should say, like last week, where Daigle came out and he had Allen just throw immediately from the very beginning, forgot running backs existed like the entire fantasy industry. 38 attempts to 11 running back attempts, with Zach Moss leading the charge from the backfield. And so again, I just think it's a tremendous spot. And the Cardinals are a median offense against opposing quarterbacks, 17th in fantasy points per game allowed to that position. But again, this is Josh Allen. So we know when it hits, it hits. Still top 5 in fantasy points per game among quarterbacks. So just the overall game environment, you have to like it for Josh Allen and the Bills offense.
Yeah, so Hribar, again, my optimals, I'll just kind of reference one more time. On DK, 75% of 200 lineups I made as far as optimal lineups. I did a little tinkering, adding some variants, just to get a different shuffle to some extent. 75% are giving me either Josh Allen or Kyler Murray as an optimal quarterback. And on FanDuel, let's see, 91% are giving me either Kyler Murray or Josh Allen. Which is the correct answer? Is it Murray? Is it Allen? You can't play both. I guess you can make more than one lineup.
Well, I think at this stage where we are right now, that it's that Kyler Murray is the cash game quarterback. Like, he has been a top 10 fantasy scorer in every week, and he's been a top 5 scorer in every week but one. And, I have to, mea culpa on the Cardinals, because for 3 weeks it happened to start the season. He came out of the gates, was only averaging 12.5 passing points per game. The horizontal raid was in full effect again. He was getting a lot of rushing production, but the passing stats were still very subpar. And then he's really cranked it up here. The horizontal raid is gone. He's pushing the ball downfield. Over the past 5 weeks, he's averaging 19.6 passing points per game, and that's already to go with his league-leading 12.8 rushing points per game. There were 200-yard rushers last week. One was Kyler Murray. He's got 8 rushing touchdowns already on the season. I think he is just the premier cash game quarterback right now for fantasy football. And Buffalo is not a defense we're scared of on any level. They might not even have, Tre'Davious White in this game. We'll have to follow him. But they've allowed 18.4 fantasy points or more to 7 straight opposing quarterbacks. The Cardinals, like they said, are kind of middle of the pack. But under the hood, it's not that hot. They've allowed 18.5 or more fantasy points to every quarterback they faced outside of Andy Dalton, Joe Flacco, and Dwayne Haskins. They've also faced Jimmy Garoppolo as one of their other quarterbacks that have taken half of their games up. Every good quarterback they've faced has given them problems, and that happened last week as well. So we should have a good back and forth matchup here. The one thing to look out for, though, as it relates to Josh Allen, is that his numbers do sag against the blitz. 7.3 yards per attempt, 62.9 completion rate against the blitz, opposed to 73% completion rate, 8.8 yards per attempt when teams sent a normal pass rush. That may come here. Arizona does have the 5th highest blitz rate in the NFL. They like to bring extra heat, but they don't get home on par with their blitz rate. They blitz a lot, but don't get home a lot. They're just 16th in pressure rate, even though they bring a lot of heat. So just something to look out for maybe, on the Josh Allen's front. But this is a game that I think that we're, like you said, earmarking for back and forth, a lot of points, just like we had last week with Arizona in that dome.
Yeah, and again, for cash game quarterbacks, for floor and all that, we love the quarterbacks that have legs. Both these guys got to speak to that as well too. You probably have the numbers, Hribar. Like, where would Kyler be just as a running back as far as RBs, like RB10, RB12? I feel like I've seen something like this on Twitter. Whatever it is, it's good.
I'd have to pull it up, but like I say, he's averaging 12.8 rushing points per game, so that's pretty strong there in itself. So I mean, we'd have to either double check it against just the numbers of just rushing only, because he obviously doesn't catch the ball. But I can pull it up here in a minute.
Why not? He should catch the ball too. Daigle, we've seen a discount as far as Hopkins on DK specifically. FanDuel, he's still kind of priced up at 7.7K. We're also getting a discount to Michael Thomas as well for, he just hasn't been spectacular. He's coming back from injury, but maybe there's a route to take advantage of that price as well too. How do you feel about Hopkins? Especially if White is out, we don't know what the deal with White is. Again, it's Wednesday night. We're talking about this. Of course, you can get to a guy like Kirk. I know people want to make Isabella happen. That's of course like tournament darts, if nothing else. Your thoughts as far as the Arizona receivers?
Yeah, just like it was a odd but plan I liked last week for Josh Allen, the Bills offense, it was the same thing for the Cardinals, where they oddly just didn't even look to DeAndre Hopkins, who was being shadowed by Xavier Howard. It was a lot like that game earlier this year where they sacrificed Christian Kirk on the right side of the field to Richard Sherman and just didn't go at him and let DeAndre Hopkins take the lesser, superior cornerbacks on the opposite side. This time around, they just didn't look at Hopkins at all. No targets in the first half, 3 catches all game. And then they went to Christian Kirk and a couple of tight ends, Max Williams, who came off injured reserve, and Daryl Daniels. Either way, it depends if we get Tre'Davious White. That's the weird thing about this. I will likely play DeAndre Hopkins anyhow. I still think he is the receiver to chase here for the team. Of course, he still leads the team, as I looked this up really quickly because I forgot the number. 29% target share. And then also, Tre'Davious White doesn't move to the slot. So this is the thing with this matchup. And Hopkins has only moved to the slot 22 snaps all year, whereas White has gone to the slot on 8 snaps all year, but he goes to both boundary sides. So perhaps they could do that again if Tre'Davious White is healthy. But either way, I think I want to target Hopkins just in a bounce back spot in this game, especially since his salary has been reduced.
We've already talked too much about quarterback wide receiver matchups, but we can say just last week, the whole White thing versus Metcalf, that blew up on our faces, or on some people's faces that were kind of obsessing over it. And I think, what was the number I saw? I feel like maybe only 2/3 of the time they matched up against each other. Of course, Metcalf crushed and Lockett was whatever. He was meh. He wasn't very good, obviously. Yeah. Do we care about this? Is it worth talking about? How much do you care?
Yeah, it was 22 of his routes last week, which is what we have to always talk about. I mean, the biggest problem with cornerback versus wide receiver analysis is the way it's presented in the fantasy community. And not to go on like a too long of a rant about this, but I mean, I don't believe that cornerbacks matchups are overrated. I don't think like that's the right word. Like, we inherently know there are better cornerbacks and worse cornerbacks. And we know that, like, if a guy played the whole game, 100% snaps against Jalen Ramsey and played 100% of his snaps against Bleedy Ray Wilson, the outcomes would be different. But that's the one thing that just doesn't happen in these cornerback matchups. I mean, it's very rarely you have a cornerback lined up across from a wide receiver for 100% of their snaps in man coverage. And that's the other point too, is that, not a lot of teams are just playing man coverage the entire game. So even when you look at someone and say, well, he runs 65% of his routes at left wide receiver, and this guy's at right cornerback for 70% of his snaps. That doesn't mean there's a direct overlap that those snaps overlap. And then two, it doesn't mean that if you line up at left, right receiver, you're running a route in that guy's coverage. If you're running a slant, a dig, or a post, like you might be getting passed on to someone else's coverage. But the way that this is presented in the fantasy community is misleading to the consumer. And that's why we get these takes that get kind of locked in this avenue, especially when we talk about slot cornerbacks, because slot cornerbacks like never have like a full overlap to slot wide receivers, but we always talk about it like they do. But I digress there. We can turn that into something else for another time. But yeah, you've seen it happen last week with DK Metcalf. And, we talked about it in the Sunday morning show that, hey, we saw him get over on Gilmore already earlier in the season. It wasn't like a guy we're just going to fade and get out of lineups. I mean, it was a sticky matchup. He didn't do a lot in his coverage. He caught one long pass. He drew a long penalty. Hopkins actually was another guy last week. He drew a bunch of pass interference yards. We don't get points for him, but Xavier Howard had 3 pass interference calls on him. The severity of those were ranged. There's a lot of ticky-tack calls in there, but yeah, I like going back to Hopkins. We've seen since Kirk has started going and getting going that like it started to, oscillate a little bit, his usage. He's starting to kind of exchange like wide receiver 4 weeks and wide receiver 1 weeks. It's gone on. He's been up, down, monster week, wide receiver 4 week, monster week, wide receiver 4 week. So maybe, we get another big week, especially if White's out. On the other side of the ball, Arizona, they didn't have Dre Kirkpatrick last week. He was out with a thigh injury. We don't know if he's going to play this week yet. They also lost his replacement, Kevin Peterson, to a concussion. He's in concussion protocol. So they might be down 2 cornerbacks coming into this week. We already know that this is a smoke revenge game.
Oh yeah.
He hit for us last week, like all receivers do, basically against Seattle. Could run into another good spot here, returning to Arizona. He had 11 targets last week, had the 99 yards, almost gotten into the paint on that screen where he went down to the 1 yard line. We were all cheering for it. And you guys already talked about, Kirk a little bit. Kirk leads the Cardinals in deep targets, and the Buffalo Bills are 30th in the NFL in defending targets 15 yards or further downfield. So a lot of options here, a lot of bring back spots. And the best part is we don't even want to play any of these running backs now because Kenyon Drake might play. It would have been a great spot to go back to Chase Edmonds and chase his usage from the week before when he had 96% of snaps and 28 touches, but they used him like a battering ram, like he was like a 240-pound running back and all his carries, and he didn't get any production. But we can't even go back to him because it looks like Drake's going to come back. So now we can just ignore all the running games too.
I think Buffalo's target tree has gotten thinner as well now with John Brown healthy, because I fell on the sword last week and played Cole Beasley as the ancillary option against the Seahawks. But what we've seen now is that Beasley has averaged the 49th most fantasy points per game among wideouts in 7 starts with John Brown, and all the way up to 16th most, so a top 16 player in the 2 games Brown was out. And so you can ignore Beasley altogether, as you should have been anyways. I was the donkey here, and just strictly go to Diggs and Brown whenever Brown is healthy, which he clearly is now.
Yeah. Dean, one last hit for you. Yeah, I got it right here. So Kyler Murray rushing points on the season has 102.3 rushing only points. There are 3 running backs that have more than that this season.
That's
Dalvin
amazing.
Cook, Derrick Henry, and Todd Gurley. And in terms of rushing points per game, Nick Chubb would be a 4th guy on a per game basis that average more rushing points than Kyler Murray. So if we want to get access to either running game here, the quarterbacks are the best running backs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other part of it is, like, by the way, there's people saying that, like, oh, I told you not to play Edmonds. He had 28 opportunities, 28 touches.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's for Zol Spade's thinking. Like, that's
as a home favorite.
It was great. That's exactly what you wanted. You tell me I'm going to get 28 opportunities for that price. I'm going to lock him in every single time and take my chances. It didn't work out, but
it was only 28 of 30 as well. Like he literally was the guy. They weren't looking anywhere else.
We got anything else in this game, or shall we move on?
Play these guys.
Yeah.
This is. I will say for tournament strategy, maybe we unveil someone later on in the show, but you didn't have to have Josh Allen last week. Although, like, that game was still the most popular with the secondary pieces. You could have had Drew Lock and took him down a tournament. You could have had Deshaun Watson. So you don't have to have the quarterbacks necessarily for tournaments, but you do need exposure to this game.
Drew Lock, one of the few things I got right last week. Unfortunately, I paired him a ton with Fant, who got hurt on the first drive. He came back kind of back and forth, but basically he had his one catch, and that was more or less all he did. Next game, Seahawks. Why not? I mean, of course, every single week the Seahawks are worth talking about. Seahawks versus the Rams. The Rams are a 2-point favorite here, -1.5, depending on where you're looking. 55 total. So once again, it's high, it's tight. We got Goff. Are we going to trust Goff? Probably more of a tournament guy, but anybody. Hribar, any quarterback against the Seahawks, any receiving core against the Seahawks, we have to talk about, right?
Yeah, right now, so through 8 games, the Seahawks have allowed the most passing yards in NFL history and 308 more yards than the next closest team in NFL history. So that's like 3 passing games of Lamar Jackson ahead of the field in NFL history. But I mean, Goff, yeah, I mean, he doesn't run, so he's not a guy like we're typically like excited to really ever play. Because I tweeted about this, yesterday about just how the high ceiling guys have had such edge. And Daigle talked about it early in the season on this show that in these DFS tournaments, man, if you don't have these guys that are capable of dropping these 35 to 40 point games, it's hard to get there on just pure pocket passing. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is like the one sole pocket passer that's like hanging on a ceiling level with like the rest of these dual threat guys on a wire to wire basis. So I mean, we have Goff, a guy that doesn't run. The Rams also just don't throw in the red zone. Inside the 10-yard line, they've run the ball 76% of their plays, by far the highest rate in the league. And as bad as Seattle's defense is on the passing level, they are the only team in the NFL that's allowed a rushing touchdown in every game this season. So it makes it interesting, for Goff. But yeah, there's no reason to go for something. If it isn't broke, don't fix it. Only person that didn't hit against Seattle was Jimmy Garoppolo. And if we could transitive property, Nick Mullins is 60 yards in the final 3 drives to Garoppolo. I mean, we can pat ourselves on the back and say the process was right, even though we still lost money on Jimmy G. But I mean, I'm looking at these receivers. I mean, they're affordable. I mean, Bob Woods has already got, he's 1 short of his career high in touchdowns already this season. He gets carries, he gets a few carries a week. Cooper Kupp's coming off of a 20 target game. I mean, Seattle just so far by and large is ahead of the pack due to that passing production we said they allowed. 22 receptions, 280 yards per game to opposing wide receivers. They're also allowing 1.6 touchdowns per game position. That's 30th. It's real easy to get on these guys. Even as a deep dart, Josh Reynolds is in play. He's ran a passer on 84% of the Rams dropbacks at 3 games prior to the bye, and he leads the team in end zone targets when they actually do throw close to the goal line. It is typically to Josh Reynolds. So, I mean, all those guys are in play. Rams passing stack, because if it's not broke, don't fix it.
We got Reynolds at 3.5 on DK, which is a really, really cheap access to get to a really, really solid game. And 5K on FanDuel, too. I'm good with both of that. Of course, I prefer to have Kupp. I prefer to have Woods. Sure. We live in the world of a salary cap, so you can't just fire out the best plays in every single game. Daigle, the running backs were mentioned kind of vaguely there, talking about the Rams, and that's not where people want to go, and I don't think people are going to want to go to Carson in this game either. Of course, I presume he's going to be back. I saw Hyde not practicing just yet, but who knows what's going on there. I'd imagine it's going to be Carson's backfield once again, but it's more about Wilson than Carson, right?
Well, I mean, that's Seattle's backfield. Rams' backfield, we don't know as well. Darrell Henderson apparently didn't practice today, and that's after the bye. So that one could be shaken up as well. It was Dallas, but remember that we were concerned. I think we touched on it a little bit last week that now that Travis Homer had been an extra week healthier, he could eat into Dallas's touches and snap rate. And that's what happened. Homer played 31 snaps. He had 6 carries and 3 targets. And so it basically became a timeshare between Dallas and Homer, which is worrisome since that will likely happen again. On the other side of the ball, it's interesting because it really hasn't been a timeshare for the Rams. It's been Darrell Henderson first and foremost in the 3 games before he got injured. 49 touches to Malcolm Brown's 24. Cam Akers had 9, including 2 games where he just didn't get any touches whatsoever, despite McVay using coach speak on him. But in the game that Henderson got injured before the bye, it was pretty much all Malcolm Brown. 57 snaps to Akers 20, as well as 12 touches to Akers 10, and a majority of Akers touches came in the second half. So it seems to be Brown's backfield. And as we also know, Brown has been the passing back behind Henderson this year. So I think overall it would be Brown the person you should chase and just let everyone else try and get cheap with Akers, because they haven't shown that they have any interest in using him whatsoever this year.
So at the risk of doing the quarterback wide receiver matchup thing again, people are already talking about Ramsey. Ramsey presumably will be on Metcalf a good bit. How much
he hasn't shadowed this year.
Oh, okay.
The interesting thing about Ramsey so far is they've actually used him almost in a Jamal Adams like fashion. Like he has moved around. At times he's played as a box defender. He went like 2 straight weeks where he just played in the slot. Like he didn't shadow Allen Robinson. He didn't shadow Terry McLaurin. He had, like I said, they've been just moving him around. They've been blitzing with him. He's playing the run really well. He left the Dolphins game early, but they've just been using him as like an all-around jack of trades defender, and not really kind of having him just like be a guy that goes out and follows people around. It'll be interesting to see if that's just how teams will just approach DK Metcalf. But like last week, I mean, we've seen it with Tre'Davious White. I mean, even if he's on him for a bulk of snaps, presuming he's going to be on him for every single snap and that every single snap is going to be man coverage is just a false lead. Like it is with all these, narratives. Like, so
it's weird.
Yeah. If he's on him for the bulk of his snaps, it could be like a suppression of him not hitting 90 yards, which he has done in every game this season, but once. Would still not be a situation where you run and hide from him either. I think it's curious this game from a passing stance is because the Rams by far have the best defense against the deep ball this year. I mean, they're allowing a league low 28.2 completion rate on throws 15 yards or further downfield. They're the only team that has not allowed a touchdown on one of those pass attempts in the NFL, and Russell Wilson leads the NFL in touchdowns on those passes. But when you go under the hood of the Rams, I mean, they faced Dak Prescott in week 1, and they went to Buffalo and got shredded by Josh Allen. And outside of those 2 quarterbacks, they faced Carson Wentz, Daniel Jones, Alex Smith and Kyle Allen, Jimmy Garoppolo, Nick Foles, and Tua in his first career start. Not a great rogues gallery to kind of dig in onto these good Rams passing defensive stats. I think that they're a good defense in totality on paper and objectively talent-wise, but their resume is severely lacking, and the one guy that they faced hot outside of Dak in week 1 absolutely carved them up. So it's going to be interesting to see, this matchup how it plays out. And these 2 teams are no stranger to playing high-scoring games. 3 of their past 4 games the past 2 years have gone 59 points or higher. So there's a lot of potential here as well.
One of the biggest conundrums with trying to figure out NFL DFS is like the sample sizes are never big enough, and there's always sort of flaw in like stats like that you're talking about. Well, who would they play against? And then by the time you figure it out, it's week 17. So
it becomes literally a new season. It's every single year. I genuinely think Rich is one of the best people that does it every single year. But yeah, it literally then becomes you have to look at the schedules beforehand, like every single week, and just analyze from that perspective. And so few people do it, oddly enough.
Metcalf or Lockett? Are you going to plant the flag here, Daigle? Or they're both good, obviously. Do you have a preference?
We were on a 3-game roll, but then we got last week's wrong. So as always, I just say the lower owned one in tournaments. So I'm going to say Lockett and then hope for the best because, again, as I say every week, it's very frustrating because they don't do it together. It's one or the other goes nuts. And if you get it wrong, they go nuts right in your face, and it's not pretty. I genuinely don't have an intelligent lean besides just playing the one that's lower rostered. I think it's a crapshoot. It makes it honestly makes cash games like extremely frustrating because you have to have one and you can't get it wrong.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. As somebody who had a good bit of Lockett and cash this last week, I understand that. I feel your pain, and I can confirm that actually is a thing.
Did I accidentally say our producer now is hitting the private chat up? Did I accidentally say when he goes nuts in your face? I did not mean to do that. But
yeah. That's just a segue to our Manscaped.
It's week 10.
Talking about.
It's week 10.
Are we not even using phrasing anymore?
Yeah. No subtlety,
do you want to take a shot as far as Cup versus Woods?
I'll go Cup. Cup has the shallower ADOT in these past 3 games, which coincide with the 3 games that Van Jefferson pretty much has been eliminated for. But like Rich said, he's still significantly leading this team in targets with 36 and target share 28.5% to Reynolds 17% and then Robert Woods 18%. So I'll take a chance and say Cup.
We didn't say much about Russell Wilson, but what do we have to say, Hribar? He's really, really good. By all means, play him in your tournament lineups. He's not popping necessarily in the optimals because of salary reasons, but if you're somebody that MME is out there, he's got to be, I assume he's got to be in your mix. I assume that's where you're at as well.
Yeah. So right now, Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson have the most fantasy points through 8 weeks of any season for a quarterback in NFL history. And it's kind of, we're on a run of this because, year before it was Lamar, and then the year before that it was Mahomes. We're just in a new era of quarterbacks, man. It's just like, we talk about this before the season ad nauseum. It's that second tier of quarterbacks, like late round quarterback is still advantageous in totality, but those guys are difference makers. The guys that can both run and pass. It's not even that the Konami code is a cheat code anymore. It's a prerequisite.
Yeah. That's the one hindrance, like you talked about, as far as Goff. Like, I suppose he can get there and throw for 350 and 4. It's a different route. It's a little trickier route as opposed to running a couple in. But I mean,
I think he's better on DK where you can get the bonuses. You can get the passing bonus than as opposed to a FanDuel where you don't. But like I said, I mean, in cash though, like I just don't know how you just don't play Kyler Murray at this point. Like you just immediately go when you set your cash lineup, you put Kyler in and you build out from that.
I will say it was an obscure week. Like Russell Wilson wasn't in tournament winning stacks despite throwing for 390 and 2 touchdowns and running one in, which is crazy. He was actually the QB 13 on the entire week with 22 fantasy points, whereas on the season that would rank him 8th in fantasy points. So it was just a really high scoring week for quarterbacks. So people just think that, like I have to go somewhere else because he can't get it done. That is obviously not the case. Like he can get it done. It was an anomaly last week that Drew Lock, Matt Ryan, literally just everyone went off.
It's a good segue to our next game. I do want to say my favorite thing that Kyler does that like nobody else does, and if you watch the games, he always extends the ball and gets an extra yard when he's going to the side. Why does nobody else do that? Like that's the easiest free yard in the world. Nobody else does it. It drives. They spot the ball where the ball is, and if you stretch your arm out, you get an extra yard. He's the only guy that figured that out. All right, there's my little rant for you people. Denver, you guys know what I'm talking about, right?
Of course,
yeah, man. Last week was actually the first time I seen someone put a good stick on Kyler. He never gets hit. And then I forget who it was from the Dolphins, though. Someone got him good early in that game, and I was real surprised because you just never see him take shots. He always does. Even when he gets sacked, he takes those slides, he gives himself up. But someone got him good on a play last week.
Denver versus the Raiders, 51 is the total here. Basically, the two biggest totals we already talked about, 56 and 55, that Bills-Cardinals game, as well as the Seahawks-Rams game. There's a couple games right on 50-51. This is one of them. The Raiders are currently a 5-point favorite against the Broncos, and you kind of mentioned Drew Lock. Daigle, we'll talk about Lock, and I guess that'll segue into Judy as well, who, surely broke out last week. All those air yards are paying off, premium talent, big prospect, and, Fant getting hurt didn't really do me any favors. I'm still bitter about it, apparently, but talk about that Denver offense.
For all the reasons we like Justin Herbert, even though Justin Herbert is clearly the better player, it's the same thing with Drew Lock this week against the Raiders defense that has created a median rate of pressure, just 21%, and ranks 29th overall in Football Outsiders' adjusted sack rate. The funny thing is that if you subtract that win game in Cleveland from the Raiders, they've combined for 60.7 points with their opponents in all their other contests. So this is another total I just thought was extremely low, which is also why we talked about them last week. I don't want to steal Rich Hribar's stat on Drew Lock because he had an amazing one that I was watching the game and I just thought, man, like this is great. Like the Drew Lock stacks that I avoided are not getting there. And then you look up midway through the fourth quarter and apparently Lock did get there because as Rich can tell you, he absolutely torched the fourth quarter.
Well, Rich, tell us.
2 weeks in a row. Yeah. So 2 weeks in a row, he got there at the end. Through the past 2 weeks, through quarters 1 through 3, he's got 5.1 yards per pass attempt, 52% of his completions, 0 touchdowns.
And it looked like it 2 through 3 quarters, by the way. It looked every bit of it.
And that's what you saw. And then in the fourth quarter of the past 2 weeks, 64% completion rate, 7.8 yards per attempt, 5 touchdown passes, all 5 of them. The Drew Lock is a very curious case study here. All right. So throws, intermediate throws and in, he's actually fine. He's completed 66.2% of his passes with 5 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, throws 15 yards line of scrimmage and in. On deep balls, he's 12 of 45, league low 26%, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions, 29.5 quarterback rating. Here's the kicker. He's second in the NFL in rate of deep throws.
He likes doing it. Yep.
He is awful pushing the ball downfield and just keeps pushing the ball downfield. He's fine on the intermediate levels and then just horrendous, but he wants to drop that swag, man. Like Ian Hartitz would say. I think he's Ian Hartitz's favorite quarterback because it's weird dances he does. But he's a very curious case study. It might be another week he does that again because the Raiders defense is bad. They're 21st in passing points allowed per game, 21st in yards per pass attempt. They don't get pressure on the quarterback. The flip side is the Raiders are like a really underrated defense. We've been talking about our offense, and we've talked about it for weeks. They're averaging 27 points per game, which is 11th in the NFL. They have a 28-point team total here too against a defense that's been pretty good outside of a couple weeks. The problem with the Raiders is outside of Darren Waller, they are like impossible to like get right, like their pieces, because the targets outside of Darren Waller just get dispersed so evenly. Like they're running goal line plays to Alec Ingold in the passing game. Aguilar's hitting on like the 4 targets he gets. Ruggs still hasn't gotten involved. Bryan Edwards only played 1 snap last week. They're just really hard to figure out like who to play outside of Waller, who with no Travis Kelce playing this week is just head and shoulders above the field, the tight end field this week. And he's not even like ever that exciting of a play because, you know, he kind of just is like the Robert Woods of tight ends. Like he gets there kind of on volume, although he does have as many end zone targets as he had all of last year as well. But they're a tricky team, the Raiders, to get right, but they're a good offense.
Yeah, tight end is a wasteland for sure, and Waller is the most. Well, I mean, Kittle's on there for whatever reason. Obviously, he's not going to play, but
they kept Kittle's price high, but not Mike Davis's.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. You know, and I see people talking about, well, you can't play Mike Davis. He's playing the Bucs. Like, okay,
at 4K, at 4K, you can't play him.
I'll play Christian McCaffrey at 4K. He's not even playing.
So who is your favorite, non-Waller guy at Oakland? And I guess what about Jacobs? We have to talk about Jacobs and acknowledge his existence. Maybe he just runs in 3 touchdowns. What do you have for Daigle as far as that Oakland offense? They're projected to score 28 points. How are they getting them? I don't know.
Yeah, it's like Rich said. You really can't depend on any of them. Aguilar is the one who ran the most routes. Bryan Edwards played a single snap last week, even though he came back. And maybe that could change moving forward. Aguilar's been honestly their best player, though, only because they don't know how to use Henry Ruggs, which is why we can never play him in a week. But the issue also is that with Aguilar is clearly headed for touchdown regression here because he's getting it done every single week. He now has 4 touchdowns on just 20 targets since week 4, which is the time he started starting for Edwards, who got injured that time. So it'd be Aguilar for me, but again, I probably won't play him at all. And then on Jacobs, it just comes down to, the touches are still there for them, honestly. But they have given us empty promises as we expected. He's not being used in the passing game. And more importantly, as everyone saw this past week, they're still intermittently sprinkling in Devontae Booker with no rhyme or reason. It's like Le'Veon Bell's role. Like you can't project it. The difference is Booker has been effective, whereas Le'Veon Bell has not been. So that is another big issue for me.
DVOA, according to Football Outsiders, Vegas is the worst team against the run. All right, Hribar, do we care about any of these running backs on Denver? Are we supposed to care about like Lindsey or Gordon, or just throw your hands up?
I wish we could, man. I wish that we could play Lindsey. I mean, Lindsey's been better, but he hasn't. In the games that Lindsey's played with Melvin Gordon, he has not had more than 9 touches in a game. Lindsey does not have a third down touch all season. Wow. He doesn't. So the problem is he doesn't play in third downs, and he doesn't play at the goal line. That's not good for
besides
DFS.
That. So isn't that Antonio Gibson basically too? That's the same deal.
He's been better, but at least Antonio Gibson gets the goal line carries for his team. Lindsey is just in purgatory if he doesn't house a 60-yard run, and he's just been better. And like I said, he doesn't have a third down touch and played a game without Melvin Gordon. They just used Royce Freeman on third downs in that week against the Patriots. So like they just don't use him in that capacity. If he doesn't house a long run, he doesn't get there. I mean, we talked about just like David Johnson not being able to play him last week because he's just not a guy we trust. Like Melvin Gordon is definitely not a dude I'm putting in.
No.
On any level. I mean, he can get there. Sure, like I said, he gets those goal line touches, and if the game script goes bad, he's the guy in the passing downs. But I'm not clicking the button on Melvin Gordon.
It's like Melvin Gordon and Lindsey, the talent disparity when you watch them. It's very similar right now to Tony Pollard compared to Ezekiel Elliott, despite the fact Zeke's still getting all the touches, and Kenyon Drake versus Chase Edmonds when they're in together.
It's contract and draft equity, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah. It's insane. It's bad and good is what it is. It's insane.
Judy is still really, really cheap on FanDuel. I think he's 5'8" on FanDuel, and he's like 5'6" or so on DK. Really, really strong play. Worth noting, again, this is Wednesday night, so maybe this is nothing, but I believe he missed practice today. Hopefully he's fine. It's not a big deal. Fant, if he's a full go and he's going to play a good bit of snaps, I'm interested. You got anything else for me, Daigle, as far as this game, or shall we branch out as far as position by position?
I will probably sprinkle Tim Patrick into lineups to get away from Judy if that's where everyone's going to go. I'll see where ownership comes in. But Patrick has recorded 7 targets in his last 3 full games, or at least 7 targets in those games, and then 100 yards and or a touchdown in his last 4. This team, remember, now is basically forced to run more 11 personnel since Albert O is out for the year with a torn ACL. So I would imagine it's Fant, KJ Hamler sprinkled in, and then Judy and Tim Patrick. And Tim Patrick just keeps surviving when he's healthy despite Judy's presence, almost as if he is the true number 1 receiver on that team usage wise. So yeah, I like Tim Patrick.
Hribar, I guess we should acknowledge Derek Carr's existence, right? Or no?
Well, like I said, it's just tricky because he's not a guy that we can't find a great pairing partner with him in tournaments to run back with him outside of Waller. And he's played really well. He's having his, arguably his best season of his career. That's just the unfortunate thing. And if I'm going to play a quarterback that's not running this week, I think I would probably look towards, outside of Goff. I mean, I think that I would rather just go back to Lock again, being the dog and, game script being a situation where they might have to chase a little bit and just not watching through 3 quarters.
Oh, I turned my mic off there for a second. Hey, feel free to grab a snack if you guys are thirsty, if you're parched a little bit, because I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys about that. Hey, autumn is in the air, and Manscaped, it's here to ensure you don't carve your pumpkins when you're grooming. By pumpkins, yeah, we actually mean your boys downstairs. In fact, Manscaped, it's on a mission to change the way you approach caring for your balls. And great news, they just released their products in the UK, Canada, and Australia. I know we're big in Japan. I'm not sure how big we are in the UK, Canada, and Australia, but we'll give you guys a promo code in a second. Manscaped, yeah, they, it's the best trimmer for your butt, your balls, and the body. That's a triple threat for you. The Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer offers a replaceable ceramic blade with advanced skin-safe technology, which helps reduce grooming accidents. Let's reduce those as much as possible. You know what a grooming accident is? Rostering Justin Jackson and Cash. I'm still bitter about it. Their new Weed Whacker.
Topical.
That was not in the read. That was just me going off the cuff. Their new Weed Whacker ear and nose. You guys are supposed to get getting a snack and a drink and all sorts of things because we still got time. Get comfortable. The new Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer uses the same skin-safe technology when you're trimming those delicate nose hairs of yours. I'm being presumptuous, but I assume you have them. The Crop Care Kit. That includes the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant. Everyone knows pumpkin spice lattes and ball deodorant, they go hand in hand. Everybody knows that, just like you're going to know in a second to play Mike Davis in Cash. Crop Cleanser Body Wash. That's a full body wash that you can use on your hair. Use it wherever you want. There you go. Put it in any body part you want. Crop Mop Ball Wipes. You never know when an opportunity strikes, so you should always be prepared. Plus, you don't want to stink when you're sitting around for Thanksgiving dinner. Grandma would appreciate that for sure. If you suffer from stank foot or you stand on your feet all day long, then I have a product for you. It's called the Foot Duster Foot Deodorant. That's a free gift. The cooling tea tree oil offers a pleasant experience for the stankiest of feet and allows you to take your shoes off in confidence. The Manscaped Refined Cologne is a cost-effective way to smell clean and fresh for your date. That feels optimal for sure. That's important. Fresh and clean. Yeah, you want to go that route for sure. The Crop Cleanser Hair and Body Wash. Now that's designed with aloe vera and sea salt to leave your skin clean, fresh, moisturized, and reinvigorated. All those deals. Now, if you're concerned about the environment and things of that sort, these formulations are all vegan, cruelty-free, dye-free, sulfate-free, paraben-free, whatever that is. I'm not sure what it is, but I read it. So you know your manhood is in good hands. Get 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. How do you do it? What's the promo code? It's ROTO, R-O-T-O. Once again, last time, 20% off free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code ROTO. Make your balls a priority this fall. Are you guys back with me? Everybody still here?
I think the first one was actually longer, honestly. Or maybe because I was prepared for this one and I was not the first time around.
Life is about expectations. The first time you had no idea it was going to be 17 minutes long.
That first one took up the whole show. Yeah.
I am parched.
That's a professional read. Take a drink after that.
I'm exhausted. Sure. Tell me about some quarterbacks you like there.
You even mixed in improv into it. Very well done.
Give me some quarterbacks, Daigle.
Oh, okay. I don't think we should go away from Justin Herbert until we are proven otherwise. And Anthony Lynn is trying to prove otherwise. But nevertheless, Justin Herbert still kicking it as a top 5 player, 5th most fantasy points per game among quarterbacks. And I know the Dolphins defense is now being respected as they should be, but they also have pretty much, while healthy, played since their bye Jared Goff, who they just did nothing but blitz and throw off. So we're not worried about that matchup. And then, of course, Kyler Murray last week only had 5 incompletions, 280 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he also, of course, ran for 100 yards. And Justin Herbert is still also averaging over 3 carries per game. So perhaps we see some rushing juice as they continue Miami to play man coverage and allow quarterbacks to run against them. So I like Justin Herbert a lot. And then this one's, maybe it becomes popular in tournaments. We have to see. We have to wait and see if he's even healthy. But Baker Mayfield, if he's cleared from the COVID list, you were clearly fighting a run-first offense with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt back this week. But this Texans defense, as we have known all along, still allowing it's the 10th most fantasy points per game among quarterbacks, but they're much worse than that. And Jake Luton still went over 300 yards against them. So
I'm reading the comments in chat, and our producer Devin, this is a missed opportunity. How did I not mention that? Not only is Manscaped available in Australia, but it's available in Australia, so you can clean your down under in the down under. So thank you for that, Devin. Well played. And how did I not weave back in the whole ball reference from earlier?
That's smooth.
That should have been a callback for sure. And speaking of smooth, manscaped.com. All right, some quarterbacks for you, Hribar. What do you have for me? We miss anybody?
Yeah, I like the Herbert call. Miami blitzes 41.6% of times, the 4th highest rate in the league. Herbert has been phenomenal when teams send extra defenders. He's averaging 9.3 yards per pass attempt, 121.3 quarterback rating when teams bring heat. So that could be welcome. I love that game is late, too. I thought that game had a shot to be one of the 3 Daigle might pick. But then also, Daigle brought Baker Mayfield. I mean, it kind of feels like people – I mean, maybe just since it's just not an exciting season for them in totality, but Deshaun Watson's been awesome. Like the last 5 weeks, he's still 6'9" on DK, which is a very nice price for what he offers. He's running more too. He's had 2.5 or more rushing points in each of his past 4 games after he had just one of his first 4. He's averaging 9.1 yards per pass attempt over his past 6 games, 4 straight top 10 scoring weeks. The Browns are 26 in passing points allowed per game. Just come back and circle back on the weather on that game Sunday morning. And if you want to text me, just text me. I'll go outside like I did last time when I threw that football 26 yards and let you know, which was under my average. I can typically get 29. So we should have known that it was going to be a bad day for those quarterbacks.
Boots on the ground, man. That's much appreciated. We're recording this Wednesday night. Yeah, so we don't know about Baker Mayfield. We don't know about Stafford. At least I don't think we know about Stafford yet. We don't know about Big Ben. Is that correct? They're all kind of up in the air at this point?
Early tea leaves sound promising for all 3.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Well, let's talk about some running backs. This is Jacksonville offense, defense. Well, the whole team is putrid. Let's just say that. Sure, why not? Throw the blanket over them. I feel like, and this is early thought process on Wednesday, but I'm just like, I want to roster at least one of Aaron Jones or Devontae Adams on pretty much every single lineup in theory, because I feel like at least one of those has to get there. 32 team total for Green Bay. And, you have to assume at least one of those guys will be on the action for at least one of those touchdowns, if not multiple touchdowns. Aaron Jones, Daigle, are we in on Aaron Jones against Jacksonville? Is he going to get enough? He got a ton of touches early, at least that last game. When who knew? Well, what was the coaches saying? Like, well, we don't know. We shall see on a Thursday night game. And all of a sudden, he's crushing in the first quarter.
Yeah, he got 20 of the team's 34 running back carries, but that game was a blowout. Like he was clearly healthy. He was moving really well early. And so, I mean, that's just something to stash for the future. If he's questionable, Packers training staff, a very tentative one. Like if someone's questionable and they rule him active, he's fully healthy. They are good to go moving forward. So yeah, you have to love Aaron Jones. It'll probably become popular later in the week, like if you want to pivot to gain leverage off Jones playing Devontae Adams. But Aaron Jones clearly just in the ultimate smash spot. Well, we need to talk about – we don't even need to talk about it because we're playing Mike Davis as well at 4K. Like there's nothing to talk about here. He's 4K. I'm not avoiding him in cash or tournaments, so that seems like the smart thing to do. And then a Cleveland run back or perhaps just even a stack option with Deshaun Watson? Would it be Duke Johnson? I know in the past by Hugh Jackson, Bill O'Brien, he's been pigeonholed into this third down back, but he wasn't with Romeo Crennel, and Buddy Howe was active. So they didn't even try to go anywhere else. He still played 52 of 64 snaps, got 100% of the remaining backfield touches whenever David Johnson left the game. So I think Duke Johnson is a good stacking option with Deshaun Watson as well. And then I guess another tournament one would be Antonio Gibson, as everyone goes to J.D. McKissic. Antonio Gibson missed practice today. That's the thing. But, of course, J.D. McKissic was used. I didn't expect 14 targets, but, of course, he was used whenever they're down by 3 scores in the second quarter. They don't leave Gibson in for that kind of role. And against, you mentioned Stafford, like Stafford's averaging under 7.5 yards per attempt. This offense is not good in the 3 games that Kenny Golladay has been out. It's one to just avoid it entirely, as their second receiver is apparently Marvin Hall when he's out. So I like Antonio Gibson in what should be a positive game script if Kenny Golladay remains sidelined, and it looks like he's going to.
On FanDuel, 5.4 for Mike Davis, and not as egregious as the 4K price on DK, but still, like, he's your optimal cash game running back play. Don't care about the matchup. We care about opportunity. We care about volume. I think he's 17 on Yahoo, which is also too cheap as well. Duke Johnson. What do you have for me, Hribar, as far as Duke Johnson in a revenge game here? I believe that David Johnson was ruled out right before he went on air. I feel like I read that. Maybe I made that up. I have to double check and confirm, but I think that did happen with his concussion. Speak on Duke, and then any other running backs kind of that are popping for you there, Hribar.
Yeah, I mean, Duke to the 20 touches. We've all just, Duke is the poster boy of the industry. We just always wanted him to get opportunity, and he might get it in the revenge game. The Browns, heading into their bye, had started to struggle against backfields, allowing 143 yards per game their previous 3. Not a great situation with Houston, who 77% of all their offensive yards comes via passing because they've only beaten the Jaguars this year. So, I mean, road dogs probably signals the pass, but he's so cheap. I mean, how do you get away from him? He's going to occupy all the snaps, like Daigle said. He has the passing equity. That's kind of like what it is, like the rushing of running backs. We talk about quarterbacks. We always want to play guys that use their legs. We always want to play running backs that are involved in the pass game, so they can't get scripted out. None of that here. You talked about Mike Davis. Yeah, I mean, we can't expect anything really rushing, but who cares? The Tampa Bay is 24th in the league in receiving points allowed to backfields. Carolina running backs had 13 receptions against the Buccaneers when they played earlier in the year. At 4K, you're going to get there in passing stats alone, on Mike Davis. And if they get inside the 5, he might get carry. We did see Curtis Samuel start to weasel his way in to getting some of those carries inside the 10. So be on the lookout for that as well. Also in that Browns game, I mean, I don't know if it's a matchup made for heaven for this Browns offense. You look at the Browns, they've run the ball on first down 62% of the time outside of the fourth quarter. It's the second highest rate in the league behind the Titans. Houston's allowing a league high 5.8 yards per carry in first down rush attempts. It's just made for the Browns to walk all over the Texans. They should be able to run the ball at will. Nick Chubb's coming back. People might be hesitant to play him. Nick Chubb, although he has not played since week 4, still leads the NFL in 20-yard runs or more. Still leads the league in that category. He was playing great football before he got hurt. People might be tentative to play him because he still is expensive coming back, but obviously he's not a cash game play, but a tournament run back with Deshaun Watson, you've got a clear correlation, bring back. And I just don't know how we fight it anymore. Like, James Robinson just has to kind of be in your player pool. Like, he's had 26, 25 touches the past 2 games. He's at 19.9 touches per game. He's running a pass route on 50% of the team dropbacks. And the Packers don't care about stopping the run. They never have under Mike Pettin. Running backs have scored 45% of the fantasy points allowed by Green Bay. It's the highest share in the league. Just got to keep playing James Robinson, man.
Yeah, and a really good bring back. You're playing a guy like Devontae Adams or Aaron Jones, or even potentially both if you're doing something like that. I like him in the game stack for sure. Of course, you go to Chark as well too. And I don't know, Luton, I know the second pass of his career, second pass of the game, whatever it was great. And he ran a touchdown in, but that's not going to happen. That's not repeatable. He's basically a statue. So
that run was hot. Ooh, that run
was hot. He hit, what was that, the circle button or the square button?
First of all, he threw a dude down. He stiff-armed a guy into the earth. and then spun on a guy. It was the Sean Bradley, like, NBA Live 96 spin move. It was the slowest spin move. It was like Scott Tolzien in the spin move. Remember that
you
one?
Just lost everybody.
Like,
Nobody knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, no one ever knows what I'm talking about.
Sean Bradley, I love it.
But I mean, work a Sean Bradley and Scott Tolzien reference at the same time. But that run was hot.
You got to do it.
Remember the chairman of the Milwaukee Bucks drafted? Somebody Google that. Bill Simmons quoted that. All right. Let's talk about some receivers before we step aside and get out of here. Obviously, I mentioned Davante Adams several times, and it's really hard to see if Jones doesn't succeed. Davante Adams has to succeed. Again, a 31 total here against the Jags. I don't know who's going to be more popular. It's going to come down to lineup construction, obviously. If you can only play one, I could see both succeeding. There's a world where both succeed in my mind. But if you only play one, is it Adams or is it Jones? Who do you prefer there, Daigle?
It would be Aaron Jones for me. That'd be my pick. Okay.
Hribar, same thought?
Yeah, I'd rather pay up for running back. I mean, Adams is I think he's worth the money, but he's getting up there. Definitely, there's no freebie with him. And I mean, I'm always going to be more inclined to pay heavy at running back than wide receiver. But I mean, I think this slate makes it tougher too, because we only have Kamara and Jones at the top. Dalvin Cook's on Monday night. We're really thin at the top of and McCaffrey, we lost him. This week we got a cheapie in Mike Davis. We probably have a cheapie in Duke Johnson. We're not going to play 3 cheapies. So we're going to pay up for one of those guys. So, I mean, I'd be more inclined, I think, to go Jones as well.
And of course, Adams, it would come down to likely losing DeAndre Hopkins in that spot, unless you want to go Adams and Hopkins, and then you pay down, as Rich said, for 3 cheapie running backs. But if everyone's going to try and do that in tournaments, that's what you want to get away from.
So I'm going to give me a Mike Thomas take. This is historically cheap for him on DK at 7.4K, and he's at home in the Dome where he's thrived the most. We have you're in. Do you have to sell me on him, or just look at his resume? Who cares what he did last week?
Yeah, I mean he's really good at football still, I believe. He played just 2 games against the Bucks, and I mean in that game last week, how do we even judge it? It was 31-0 at the half. He still had, he caught 5 of 6 targets for 50 yards. I didn't really see any ill effects that he looked like a different player and a less dynamic player. They just shredded. I mean, maybe they're going to have a different team dynamic just because they have more playmakers this year than they did a year ago, and it was just him and Kamara. But San Francisco has been absolutely decimated by the last 2 lead wideouts they faced in Davante Adams and DK Metcalf. He had a huge game against them last year when the 49ers defense was objectively good. And it currently isn't because they don't have any players. So, I mean, I'm in on Michael Thomas, getting some exposure to Michael Thomas while he's still suppressed.
This is a DK specific. Daigle, there's another 3K cheapie that's popping in the optimals. Again, it's Wednesday night. Everything changes. Would you know who it is? Do you have a guess? Or I can tell you who it is, possibly because of injury, possibly because of matchup, possibly just the tightness of the cap potentially on a Wednesday night.
I'm looking at my model. I know who it is. I'm actually going to say the other person though. I'm going to pay up at that position. Is it just Jakeem Grant?
Okay. So you prefer the 5K, I think is.
I prefer Devontae Parker is what I'm saying. Yeah. That's who I'm trusting over Jakeem Grant. And Preston Williams, I wish he would play because he actually developed a bit of a rapport there with Tua before he got injured with 5 targets. But then Devontae, I am just trusting as the more viable wideout, proven wideout, I should say. Although maybe since it is an ambiguous situation, maybe you should pay down. Marcus Johnson probably still just haunts my dreams, still paying down to 3K. But either way, Devontae Parker, that's who I'm interested in paying up for this spot, especially because the Chargers defense, I understand they have all this talent, but also 1, they're injured, and 2, the Chargers defense just hasn't been good. Now their last 5 games, they've averaged 31 points allowed to opposing offenses. So it's one we're trying to attack, and that's an easy way to go Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen, and then you run it back with Devontae Parker or Jakeem Grant. My pick would be Parker. Who else do I like? Rich, go ahead. I had one. I lost.
The
Dolphins
Dolphins are a
Rich,
team.
then expand out to other players you like there.
Well, the
Rich.
Dolphins kind of like the Raiders, man. Like they're kind of hard to figure out because they're like these ancillary jabronis are getting into the box, man. Durham Smythe is scoring one week. The ghost of Mac Hollins is coming out and scoring touchdowns. Adam Shaheen is getting touchdowns. They're another one of these weird teams, man. Like they dial up weird plays in the red zone for specific players, and it's hard to kind of grab the core of their touchdowns. They're very tricky in that.
Give me the
way.
scenario. How are the Dolphins going to beat the Chargers this week? What goofy thing's going to happen with the Chargers this week?
They're probably going to score a defensive touchdown like they do every week, seemingly. At this point, I just am penciling them in for a defensive touchdown. Variance be damned. It's just going to happen. Why fight it? But no, I mean, it's like I said, they just run they're going to play one of these. It'll be Salvon Ahmed or DeAndre Washington being active. Someone will score in this game that no one has exposure to because seemingly anytime we play a Dolphins guy, some of the other guys, like just the ancillary jabronis, get in the box, man.
How many times I look up and Adam Shaheen is scoring? It's amazing. Like he's always running inside the 10-yard line. Like, he's always there.
How many times have you been like on a false lead of Mike Gesicki scoring a touchdown the past month and it's not him? My son was like, "Oh, Gesicki." I was like, "That ain't him, man."
Just tell him the rule. It's never Gesicki. That's the one rule. It's literally never Gesicki.
I will say, Jarvis Landry, man, no one ever likes to play this guy, and I don't like to play him either. But before the bye, don't be overlooked because people will cite the weather for Rashard Higgins not being involved in that game. Jarvis Landry had 11 targets in that game. He had over 40% of the team targets, and he could have had a huge game. He dropped a touchdown and dropped another long pass in that game. That is a huge target share in the first game that they played without Odell Beckham. And as fun as a story Hollywood Higgins is, Jarvis Landry's resume, he is the best receiver on the Cleveland Browns.
All right, before we step aside and get out of here, I know we mentioned Waller in passing. Certainly, if you have the salary, he seems like the best possible tight end option. If you don't have the salary, Evan Ingram has been getting a ton of looks. Last 3 weeks, like 29 off the dome, more or less. He got in the box last week for what it's worth. Dallas Goedert seems kind of sort of something interesting. It's bad, Daigle. Give me some tight end takes.
Dallas Goedert would have been mine because he played 86% of the snaps for the team's bye. So if someone's just looking at the targets, like that's fine. And they're not going to run 12 personnel. Like they catered to 12 personnel for Ertz and Goddard, not for Goddard and Richard Rodgers, although Richard Rodgers was fine whenever he was in there. So it's going to be Jalen Reagor, Fulgham, and Greg Ward most likely, maybe Jeffrey if he ever comes back. But Dallas Goedert is absolutely the guy you want. It's especially because like we can just keep searching for these guys. Talk about season long as well. Just anyone to start with confidence, literally anyone. Like Goddard's that guy. He played exactly what we wanted him to do. No more Zach Ertz to take double-digit targets still. So yeah, you just go to Goddard. I hate tight end, honest, by the way.
Is Henry not going to happen? Is it just not going to happen? Like, what's the deal with Hunter Henry? We want him to be better than he actually is?
I tried to will it last week, and I don't know what we do, man. Eventually you have to stop breathing CPR into dead situations.
It's going to be when you don't play him, by the way. That's when it always comes.
Yeah, I had it. I thought it was finally. I was like, I didn't play him those last 3 weeks when everyone chased. Now I'm going to be smart and come in now. And still.
All right, let's close. Is there anybody else as far as tight ends, Daigle or Hribar as far as tight ends? Because like it's just a dead zone and we're throwing darts. And is there anybody you feel good about, or it's just whatever fits, or with your stack? Is that how we're doing it?
Yeah, I mean, don't pay for one. Is really the best advice I could give.
He's
to do that.
One more I'll be overweight on will be Austin Hooper's. Austin Hooper may be my favorite play this week at tight end, honestly, just because he's not only pretty cheap at the position, but everyone's going to forget that in 3 games before he got injured, he had a 22% target share at least in all 3 of those games. Like his role was coming on very strong before he went under the knife. Now he's back fully healthy, 14 days of rest, practicing to start the week. So I like Austin Hooper a whole lot.
The chat's talking about, I know we love that Buffalo-Arizona game, but they threw out the name Dan Arnold.
I can't do it, man.
I can't do that.
Dan Arnold.
He's 2.6K on DK, so like that's...
They want to play Dan Arnold even though Max Williams came back last week and was actually involved?
I don't want to play either, but like, yeah, I'd probably feel better about Max, but like I don't think I want to play either one of those. All right, we got to step aside. We got to get out of here. Who was that?
Darren Daniels, the guy that scored a touchdown. Daryl Daniels.
To steal a Rich line, the thing with Dan Arnold, at least you're taking one L and not two.
We're, George Costanza will be very disappointed. We're told that we're supposed to finish strong, and we're finishing with Dan
Arnold
and Arnold.
And Austin Hooper, who hasn't even played in 4 weeks.
That's the show, though. Hribar, tell the people, of course, they're aware, but where to follow you, where to get the worksheet, all that good stuff.
SharpFootballAnalysis.com, Pre-Snap Motion Podcast, Sharp Angles Podcast, every Wednesday night with Dean, with Daigle. Here.
Daigle, same question.
At Najee Daigle on Twitter, rotoworld.com, Rotoworld Football Podcast with Dean, with Hribar here.
Much appreciate you guys watching. Do subscribe. We do appreciate that. It does help with the old analytics of the old YouTube. But as far as I know, it is working this evening. We appreciate you guys watching and chatting along with us. Devin, our producer, is going to go ahead and drop a couple of links for you guys. A link into the single entry series. We haven't talked about that in a few weeks on FanDuel. The best single entry contest over there in FanDuel with added value as well, too. If you do well in 4 of the 8 weeks that are counted, I believe they work all the way up to week 13. 3 different levels as far as buy-in, $5, $33, $100. You want to get access to all the RG tools, all the RG shows. You want to lineup HQ. You want to build yourself 150 lineups very quickly, very easily. You put your own little rules in there. Get yourself $5 off for that. Hit that link, $5 off the Core 4. That's football, baseball, basketball, and golf. Golf, of course, going down tomorrow as far as the Masters. I've said a lot of words. Manscaped.com as well. That was a lot of words, too. Smash the over on Manscaped words. He was Daigle. He was Hribar. I was Dean. This was football. Good luck this week. We're out of here. Holler.